Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining the APCO team today for our community, the latest in our community webinar series, where we like to explore the sustainability topics that matter most to our network. My name is Peter Brisbane. I'm APCO's Government Partnership Manager. You may be wondering why the APCO Government Partnership Manager is here to talk about research and academia. That will all become clear over the next few minutes. Before we jump in, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're all separately meeting on around Australia today. We recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. The session will be recorded today and made available for all to rewatch on APCO's website over the coming weeks. We'll have time at the end of the session to answer any questions that you may have on today's topic. Please use the Q&A function throughout the session. You'll find that in the middle of the bottom of your screen. Also feel free to add into the chat box your name and organisation, as well as where you may be joining us from today. And I can see there's a bit happening there in the chat box already, so thank you for that. So today's topic is all about research and how we can harness research capabilities and funding to help deliver a circular economy for packaging in Australia. We're very lucky to be joined by three experts in this field: Dr. Bronwyn Laycock from the University of Queensland, Dr. Demirbilek from the University of New South Wales, and Dr. Vincent Rouillard from Victoria University. And you can tell which state that they're all from just from the names of their universities. But we're very lucky to have such distinguished experts in the field of packaging research with us today. You may be wondering why APCO has an interest in research. It's because research can help to solve the sorts of problems that we have in working towards a circular economy for packaging in Australia. We know that there's a lot happening in terms of research and capability around Australia, and we know that there's a lot of interest from governments and objectives that governments have about achieving a circular economy for packaging. And we know that there are a bunch of problems that APCO's members and partners have in achieving those sorts of outcomes that they need solved. So the idea is to bring together those three different groups and improve collaboration between researchers, industry and government. We also want to ensure that there's a holistic and strategic focus. So it's quite possible to generate a lot of research activity, but unless it's solving the right problems and heading us all in a consistent direction, and it's the sort of direction that governments and industry want to head in, then it's not going to deliver the sorts of outcomes that we want. So a holistic and strategic focus. And then getting into more detail, how do we match the right problems? So the problems that industry is facing in achieving those sorts of outcomes that we're looking for, to the right capabilities. So that means the right researchers in the right institutions and with the right resourcing. And that's particularly where government comes in. It's not solely about government, but government does make a lot of money available to support research. And what we would like to do is ensure that as much of that funding as possible goes to the sorts of problems that we would like to see solved. There are a number of different vehicles for collaboration that our members will be familiar with, our members and partners and academic research institutions. So there are individual projects, and that's where individual members are collaborating with researchers to solve specific problems and develop specific opportunities that they have. A good example of that in APCO's space is the University of South Australia collaborating with Detmold over in Adelaide to develop the Recycle Me coffee cup. So looking for the right sort of plastic lining on those coffee cups to enable Detmold to have those recycled through a process that they had identified with one of their partners. So that was a significant research project between a member and a university. And in fact, the Recycle Me coffee cup, thanks to Detmold, became an award winner in APCO's awards a couple of years ago. Then there are sector-wide projects, so looking at a whole industry focus. And so a couple of examples of that are in relation to roads and in the inclusion of plastics in road construction. At the moment, there are a couple of projects. One is being run by the Australian Roads Research Board in conjunction with WA and Queensland, looking at research on plastics in roads. And Austroads is just about to kick off another project looking similarly, but in a different way at the same problem, with RMIT in Melbourne. And then there are major Commonwealth funding programs, like we've worked recently to support proposals under the National Environmental Science Program. We're developing a proposal at the moment for the CRC projects round 10, which is specifically targeting research on waste management and recycling. And we're aware that there are some interesting developments in CRC. So that's one of the largest types of research funding. There's a Fight Food Waste CRC project that relates to packaging, and there's also a proposal for another at CRC. It's only a proposal at this stage, but that's on Clean Australia, and it would include an element on waste management, including in relation to packaging. Back in February, we had a workshop, some of you may have attended, with some research institutions, governments, and a bunch of members and other partners. One of the researchers that we had was actually Bronwyn Laycock, and so I've borrowed Bronwyn's slide here and the next slide, and Bronwyn's on the line here, so I'll just ask you to speak to this one, Bronwyn.
Yes, thanks very much. So I just wanted to highlight with this a couple of things. One is the fact that there are a range of support mechanisms through funding, ranging from the very fundamental, which typically doesn't involve industry, which is the ARC Discovery grants, which are meant to be the base level fundamental work, all the way up through into increasingly applied projects down the bottom right. So we've got Linkages, which many people would be familiar with, which is pretty much tailored for industry, single industries, rather limited research group collaborations. I don't have up here the Innovation Connections sort of sit a little bit below this, where it's a smaller scale, but again, a direct and immediate funding. We do have ARC centres like the Industrial Transformation Training Centres, ITTCs, which are really about PhD students and enabling and developing the new generation of students focused on industry challenges, as well as the research hubs, ITRHs. These are ARC centres, and the research hub is meant to be a collaboration addressing network problems for industry. And then we go up to the bigger groups, which are the CRCs, Cooperative Research Centres, and the Defence Research Centres. And then we also have CRC projects, which are a smaller scale from cooperative research centres, but more talking about the $3 to $5 million, whereas the CRCs are the major $130 million kind of 10-year programs. These are a summary of the main mechanisms for engagement in word form, but what I haven't got here and what I can provide to people is that there's a detailed summary of the key features of these, the main and most readily accessible industry academia engagement mechanisms. This is not exclusive. So what I'm trying to say is that these are the ones which most people can access quite quickly, and they have a range of pros and cons. So with Innovation Connections, it's a $50K investment for 12 months with very short turnaround and co-contribution from industry, from government, to match that 50K, and the possibility of a second round. Linkages tend to be, they take about 6 to 12 months to get started once you put the grant application in, as opposed to the Innovation Connection, which is typically a 2 to 3 month turnaround. Linkages are the next scale up, around the 300K investment from industry or so, of that sort of order, 3-year projects typically. ERC projects, the next step up again, but much intensely competitive at the moment because they're very attractive vehicles. They're actually quite rapid turnaround, but and a small investment up front, and so on. Increasing level of commitment, time, and return for industry with the range of vehicles here. ITTC's very good return. The CRC is variable, but 10-year programs of work typically. So that's just a very quick snapshot, but if anyone wants the detailed summary, we do have that available.
Great, thanks, Bronwyn. And I think that is a really useful snapshot of the sorts of vehicles that are available. And remember, the objective of working through these vehicles is to achieve the sorts of outcomes that you want, solving problems, developing opportunities in your business. And the advantage of using these vehicles is that you get government funding to leverage the sorts of effort that you want to put in and the researchers want to put in. So I'll hand over now to Bronwyn to talk through the capability that's available at the University of Queensland. Thanks, Bronwyn.
Thanks again, Peter. So I'm going to just give a quick summary of the UQ Plastics in the Circular Economy programs that we have running, because one of the things that we've realised over the last few years is that, you know, these kind of challenges, they're not simply technology solutions that are needed. Technology is obviously critically important, But we're trying to think more holistically in UQ about ways in which we can address the major challenges that we're facing. Now, I'm just going to highlight again for people, I think everyone in the room is very, very familiar with the fact that we have an exponential growth in plastics production and consumption, but at the same time, where our existing infrastructure and capabilities are really limited in terms of the effectiveness of recycling. And one of the things we're looking at from the UQ perspective is the fact that we're looking across the value chain, not just in materials where we can look at renewable feedstocks and novel materials, but also through manufacture with product designs, holistic designs, thinking about additives that go into these plastics, supply chain, commercial behaviour, logistics, consumer behaviour, economic incentives at the customer end, and then of course a lot of focus, which is a lot of us will be talking about at the disposal end and intercepting the waste, recycling the waste, end-of-life management and other opportunities. So across the value chain, we're trying to think about the ways in which we can interrupt the current system, which is not efficiently capturing and reusing these materials. So if we express how we're structuring our UQ plastics approach, which is just, as I said, beyond materials, if we go top left, we're looking at new designs and so on, but we're also conscious that we really need much better data within the Australian context on materials flows, intervention optimisation, geographic distance, and of course modularity is a feature with needing some remote processing in the Australian context. We're very, very clear, it's become increasingly clear over the last few years how important policy is and understanding targets and agreements and trying to provide government with the right data that enables effective policy settings and change. We are very conscious also of appropriate end-of-life management and some of the complexities around designing for effective end-of-life management, closing the loop. I will point out that biodegradability for us is a feature, and I'll come to that again in a few slides. Consumer behaviour, critically important in this space, and there's a lot of work that can be done on understanding and controlling consumer behaviour, or influencing, sorry, is a better word. Awareness, the drivers for people, all of that work is still much needed. And we've done surveys of the Australian public on their attitudes to plastic to help us understand some of the drivers here. And then there are supply chains and economic incentives and management. So all of this work is integrated into our UQ plastics framework at the moment. So for us, our challenge is to deliver the excellence in the research and development. But driving all of this, and it always has done for the time that I've been working in this translational plastics area, is that we want to have the strong industry linkages so that we're really working to industry drivers, industry needs, so that what we're doing is relevant and it's going to actually assist in the transformations that are needed. And as I said over on the left-hand side of this slide, I've got the capabilities that fit within EQ across the value chain that I was talking about to help us deliver what I was saying was our target. So talking a little bit more about the technical and other underpinnings, we see that we have effectively 3 programs in the work that we're trying to do. One on transforming industries, one on affecting change, and one on the plastic systems and impacts. And we're trying to integrate those with education and outreach, because we think that that's something that is really sorely needed. And we're trying to do increasing amounts of work in that education and outreach activities. And I'm part of a NESP proposal that Peter was talking about before, where this is written right into the framework of those grants. The stakeholder engagement is critical for management of systems, waste management system change. So I talked before about some of our design considerations. I'm just going to touch now for the next few slides on some of the technical aspects of the work that I particularly do, as well as some of the people in our team on the plastics space. And we're looking at sustainable feedstocks, clean synthesis, polymer performance, and waste avoidance. And we're focusing on biodegradable, but also recyclable, reprocessable sort of strategies here, particularly. And this is the area in the top left that I'm going to be talking about in this particular presentation, but we do work across the other areas as well. So this is a quite busy slide, but it highlights the fact that our bioplastics and biocomposites research at UQ is very broad, and we have a deep level of skills and expertise in this space. So we go from everything from methane and even CO2 conversion to biopolymers with purple phototrophics to basic synthesis and block polymer design tailored for different properties, including for tailoring and biodegradability. Use of materials such as lignin in polyurethane foam type structures, controlled release work, pesticides and agrochemicals. We go through to fertilisers, biocomposite fertilisers, paunch waste biocomposites. A lot of work, Peter Halley's on the call here, on starch-based hydrogels and starch smart materials, and then across to composites and other structures. And we have very, very good facilities such as fire performance or large-scale design of fabrication, as well as polymer processing. And then we have a big suite of work in degradability assessment and soil and marine degradability particularly. We also do, as I said before, quite a bit of work on alternate fate type work. So catalytic depolymerization of polymers, polyethylene terephthalate separation and conversion, low temperature monomer production strategies, hydrothermal liquefaction. We've even done things like looked at novel strategies for dealing with PVC waste, such as converting the PVC into carbon fibre through novel approaches there with an inexpensive feedstock. So we're working not only on the synthesis end and on the bio-derived materials end, but also on the end-of-life management and reprocessing and depolymerization and oligomer production, which is the feedstock recycling end. Okay, and for those who are interested, we stretch beyond this into a wide range of areas where we're looking at feedstocks for biomaterials and biofuels and so on. Underpinning this, I just wanted to highlight with the last few slides that we do have a very, very nice suite of materials that of equipment that we've collected over the years, which means that we can do appropriate and proper pilot scale material production. We have film towers, we have extruders, we have injection molders, we have small scale work, which is down at the 10 grams, where we can do model extruder work, mini injection molding and electrospinning, all the way through to the larger scale pre-industrial level kind of processing. And we have a full suite of all the mechanical properties testing equipment that would be needed to support industrial application. In terms of composites, we really do have state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities at UQ with a large manufacturing space. And as I said, advanced chemical characterization, micro, nano analysis, and so on. Production autoclaves available, and the flame testing available. And of course, all of the analytical tools that you would expect to see associated with this sort of work that we've been doing for many years. The other thing, just to highlight at the end, that I mentioned that we do the degradation testing, and we can do the accelerated degradation, which is the classic QSUN or UV promoted degradation, but we also do field site work with fully monitored environmental testing, and we also have lab-based facilities. We are not NADA registered, but we do screening type work for biodegradation, and we do a lot of work on understanding the fundamentals of degradation of polymers. And that is an area, I think, that's of increasing importance as we try to understand the fates and impacts of polymers in our environment and the lifetimes as well. So where to from here? I think you'll find as you go around Australia that each of the universities has their own particular area of expertise and knowledge that you can tap into for a particular challenge that you're looking for. And one of the recommendations would be to understand what the different universities have on offer. And the three of us here at this talk are presenting different aspects and the different unique capabilities of our institutions. And you'll find the same repeated across Australia. We have a very vibrant research community, which I think we are hoping that increasingly we can network with industry to deliver the sorts of solutions that are needed. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Sorry, I just had a bit of trouble unmuting there. We'll just go to Oya Demirbilek. Oya, I think you might have already received the remote control, so you'll have to click on to the next slide, which introduces you. But that was really good. Thank you, Bronwyn. I always love, as a policy person, I always love looking at the machinery and so on, all the equipment that you have at universities. And I must say, I can think of no better place than Queensland to do UV degradation testing. Just the perfect place. Oh, sorry, I did have remote control. I should have forwarded on to the next slide, but there we go.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, thank you, Peter. And thank you, APCO, for organizing this research phase. So, oh, can I drive the slides? Yes, I can. So I want to talk about the ARC Research Hub for accessible packaging and product design that we're working on. And this is an industry transformation research project. This is a grant application. So we started with the research question saying, how might we shape the future of food delivery and food-related packaging so that these are accessible and sustainable for all? And we want to do this with co-design, transformation, and delivery. So we want to co-design the future of food delivery systems with consumers, a wide range of consumers, putting people at the center, and with the focus on accessibility, equity, and sustainability. And we want to transform currently inaccessible, wasteful, and hard to recycle food packaging into easy to open, easy to access, easy to understand, and easy to recycle and reuse solutions for a desired future for all of us. And we want to deliver this collaborating with the industry, with a wide range of consumers, and of course, academia. So when we talk about sustainability, for us, it has 4 pillars. So these are the 4 angles we are tackling: environmental, social, economic, and cultural. And as you can see in the white, I highlighted the topic areas of our project, and they weave across the 4 angles of sustainability. And the project is to transform Australia's food delivery systems, including food packaging and food-related product industries, by equipping them with a co-design process and inclusive design tools. So looking at the future pressures on food delivery, providing inclusion for all consumers, and that includes all people, people with disabilities and chronic conditions, improving accessibility of food delivery, improving the ease of use, including the ease of understanding how to recycle something, and tackling as well food waste and malnutrition, and supporting design for circularity. So how big of a lost market opportunity am I talking here? The global lost market opportunity is estimated at 1.27 billion consumers. This is as big almost as the size of the market in China, and it's 1 in 5 people. And that includes older people and people with various disabilities. But they don't live alone. You know, they have a wide circle of carers, close friends, and families with emotional attachment. So there you have a further 2.3 billion consumers. And if you think that 55% of all of us, we live in cities nowadays, this number is projected at 75% for 2050. So we are going to live in crammed cities that are only 3% of the land's earth. And if you think that 80% of disabilities are invisible, most of you are not even aware that people are struggling in their lives. 1 in 3 people have a disability or are caring for someone with a disability. That's how big this is. And in Australia alone, 4 million people have some sort of chronic joint disorder like arthritis. And dignity is to design what justice is to law and health is to medicine. And this is a quote from John Kerry. So our project aligns strategically with the SDGs, and in particular SDG number 10, which is reducing inequalities, number 9 and 11, but also touches on 9, 3, and 2. So 65 to 70% of Australian packaging is used by the food and beverage sector. This is huge. And since COVID-19, older people in isolation are more at risk of malnutrition than ever before. There's an urgent need to make food packaging accessible for all. And everyone has been talking about how much plastic we consume. People staying home have been consuming more packaged food. Packaging waste has spiked, and people throwing the wrong thing, not knowing what to do, has led to unprecedented levels of contamination. There is urgent need to design better solutions or make recycling labels and signs easy to understand, accessible, and make them mandatory as well on all products. So this is another diagram for you. Out of the top 10 fastest growing e-commerce product categories, half of them, 5, are food packaging. Out of the 15 here, 10 are packaging in general. This is a case study, a company called SPC, manufacturing these fruit cut tabs for hospitals. Arthritis Australia has been leading this case, and it's a very active organization in Australia, and they're following consumer voice. So the consumers were complaining about these cut fruit tubs. They couldn't open them in hospitals, and they were going back in trays and just dumped food waste. So Arthritis Australia contacted SPC and said, are you realizing the market you are losing there? They decided to listen, and they redesigned their product in this way. This product went on then to win the Packaging Innovation Design Award from the Australian Packaging Institute, and then the World Star Packaging Award globally. So kind of a win-win for all. Another case example is from Kellogg's. This is not an Australian company, but the same scenario. People couldn't open, and Arthritis Australia followed, contacted them, they listened, and they redesigned their packaging so that it's easy to open. It has the easy open certification from Arthritis Australia. And now, same as the previous example, people who have used these products in hospitals want them in the supermarket shelves as well. So the market is expanding. This is another example. Flavors Creations has invested a lot of money into this product, but now they are the market leader in that field. The dysphagia cup for older people. This is another case study from Wollongong University, a product which was butter in tube that had received accessibility certification from Georgia Tech Institute in America, was trialed here in Australia in the hospital. And here in hospitals, when they carry the food, they have two containers, a hot one and a cold one. And so they put the butter in the cold one. And by the time these butters were reaching the patient rooms, they were hard rock, so impossible to squeeze. So the nurses had to put them in their bras to heat them up for the patients. But that example is to talk about what our research hub will provide, which is a contextual assessment facility and protocols to assess food packaging and food-related devices for their accessibility and usability in the context they will be used, or in situ if needed. Because this way, organizations and companies can understand when and where their products may fail. And I talked about how people were confused, not knowing what to throw where, what to recycle, and then confusing other things and creating more problems. This is a fantastic initiative from Planet Art, Prep Design, and APCO, the Australasian recycling label, which makes it very clear which components of the packaging can be recycled, which ones should be thrown away. And even here, as an academic, I would say, can everyone read English? It's written in English. In Australia, it's a very multicultural country, and older generations may not all speak English. And then can everyone see the small prints? We need to kind of check that with our consumer base. And these are all the partners we have so far at the top, the 5 universities and all the organizations involved. So key deliverables will really be the cutting edge research that we provide with the consumers, looking at the future, a robust co-design process with the consumers from all the organizations that you have seen in the previous slide, a contextual assessment facility to assess and certify the designs, and then toolkits, processes, systems, guidelines for the development of next generation accessible food delivery systems. So if you think that our research hub can help you, please contact us. So over to you, Peter.
Great, thank you, Oya. That was another excellent presentation, and really great to see again, similarly with Bronwyn's presentation, a lot about integration, in this case integration with a number of different issues in packaging. So something really valuable there, and we've been very happy to talk with Oya over the past couple of months about supporting the Research Hub and looking at how it might help to advance the sorts of interests that we have within APCO and amongst our members, while also supporting all of the other very good work that Oya and the team are doing. So over to you, Vincent.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for the invitation to speak this afternoon. Hello, everyone from Melbourne. We're in lockdown. Just to start, I'll give you, some of you may know this already, but I'll give the audience a brief history of packaging research at VU. It started back in '89, believe it or not, over 30 years ago, where we established a packaging dynamics laboratory within the mechanical engineering department. And then we broadened the scope of research in packaging at VU to by establishing the Center for Packaging, Transportation and Storage. And today we operate under the banner of the Engineered Packaging and Distribution Research Group. Over the years, we've hosted a couple of international conferences on packaging. We have undertaken numerous research projects, both curiosity-driven work and industry-driven work. And over the years, we've seen a numerous graduation of master's and PhD students. Despite what's being said sometimes outside, we still continue to provide testing and consultancy services to industry. And today we are actively involved in a couple of major initiatives. One of them is to participate in the establishment of a Clean Australia CRC. So this is under application, and we are currently seeking for industry-driven projects to be carried out under the CRC, should we be successful, of course. And importantly, we are working towards establishing a new packaging compliance laboratory at VU. We are seeking funding, mostly from government funding, and I'll talk about that a bit later at the end of my presentation. So I'll just broadly describe the three main focus of research on packaging at VU. The first one is targeted toward the need for packaging material in the first place. When we look at what's being used today and how much packaging is being used purely to try and protect produce and product from various hazards during distribution. And we believe there's an awful lot of work to be done to try and better understand these hazards during distribution, to minimize them, control them, so that the need to use protective packaging in the first place will be greatly minimized. And we are working heavily on that, in that area. The second focus is, oops, I'll just jump one here, is to look at developing new packaging materials from agricultural waste. I see there's an awful lot of effort around the world and in Australia in trying to find alternatives to single-use plastics. And we believe that looking at material that is considered as waste from agricultural sites could be a rich source of material to create packaging. The inspiration for this, and I'm sure I'm not unique in this, came from a report that came out of the UK nearly 20 years ago, showing the amount of waste of products and produce, especially in developing countries where the transport infrastructure is poor, and transport and storage infrastructure is poor, and sometimes up to 40, even 50% of produce being lost during transport between the production site, usually a farm, and the market. And imagine operating a business where you know that 50 or 40% of your product is lost. And it's extraordinary waste, especially in areas where people need fresh food, and it affects nutrition, it affects health. And the idea came to me that wouldn't be cute if a grower or a farmer could grow a packaging crop alongside a production crop, or even use some leaves and shoots, waste material from the crop to create a basic packaging material to protect the product for the journey to market, and even then retrieve that packaging material, either sell it or use it to dig back in the soil, or even use it for animal feed. And I think for many developing countries, and even in Australia, this sort of thing would make, this idea would make a very attractive proposition as an option or alternative to engineered plastics. And the first focus, which we want to work on, we're not really doing a lot of work in that space, and Bronwyn mentioned this, is to try and address the stock, and unfortunately, sadly, the growing stock of contaminated plastics that ends up in the environment, in the oceans and the riverways. And I think there's a power of work to be done, which will take presumably decades, to retrieve these materials and deal with them properly. And one of the things we want to work on is looking at accelerated anaerobic digestion to try and get exactly the right conditions to transform these carbon-based plastics into a digestate that could be used as soil enhancement or other type of application. So we think this is a really long-term effort, and we think this is better than, you know, waste to energy or burying waste in roads, which we believe is a medium or short to medium term solution. And this would be a more permanent solution, if you like, long-term solution. Since Peter did encourage us to sell the capabilities of our universities, I will take the opportunity to do so now. We have a number of laboratory facilities at our Footscray Park campus, which is the main university campus. We have a dynamics research laboratory, which is primarily geared for shock and vibrations to undertake investigations towards distribution packaging, to find out why packaging is needed in particular environments, and if there are issues, to allow us to investigate those issues. And we are very well stocked in the kind of equipment we needed for that sort of work, with vibration and shock shakers and universal testing machines and so forth. In our Werribee campus, we have facilities which was established some years ago, and then run Environmental and Distribution Dynamics Lab, or Packaging Dynamics Lab, where we have, some of you may know this lab quite well, the large vibration shaker, which we use for transport simulation, and we have programmable shock generators, compression testing machines, a free-fall drop testing machine, which is used quite a lot, the cushion tester, which I believe will be used quite a bit in the future when new cushioning material comes on the market, and a series of environmental chambers and data recorders. And we also have very well equipped polymer research labs and food research laboratory. We actually have a food technology research group, and also an analytical instrument lab where we have all the important equipment needed for looking at new materials. I want to finish off by talking briefly about this new idea, the Packaging Compliance Lab. We're currently forming an industry advisory group, of which APCO will be part. So we're putting together a number of experts to try and advise us as to how we're going to set up this laboratory. We are very actively looking for funding. There is some good news that has come across, that some money is coming our way. We haven't got hold of the money yet, but importantly, should we be successful, and I think there's a fair chance we will, this facility would be, if you like, an industry facility, and VU would simply be the looking after a facility for industry. It will serve two main purposes. One of them, to provide an independent and centralized facility to support compliance testing for industry, especially when it comes to packaging materials, and also develop efforts to develop and validate new packaging materials. So this is something we want to do ourselves, or whether industry want to participate in developing these new packaging materials. And one of the other activities we want to engage in is to review and look at where there's a need for developing new standards to define the performance of packaging materials. At this early stage, the broad capabilities of this facility would be end-of-life compliance testing, food contact compliance testing, active packaging testing, packaging materials and performance, and also load safety and distribution compliance testing. So we are very busy to try and refine this proposal, and I'm sure if we are successful, you will be the first to know. Thank you for listening, and I believe there'll be a short Q&A session following up soon.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm glad actually that you did talk about the packaging compliance laboratory, Vincent, because I think it would be a fantastic addition to the landscape on research in Australia. And maybe while we wait for people to start entering their questions, hopefully we'll get lots of questions, but I'll get started. One of the things I'm interested in very specifically, Vincent, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is the absence of something as basic as a certification capability for some of the Australian standards that we have in relation to packaging. So particularly for compostability, for example. Is that the sort of thing that you would see the Packaging Compliance Laboratory taking on as well?
Yes, that's actually one of the top of the list. So what we're doing now, we've identified just about every possible test protocol related to packaging that exists, and we are getting a group of experts together to tell us, to give us priorities. And I think biodegradability testing is a huge one. I think currently the Australian Bioplastic Association handles this, and they send the work to be done overseas, from what I understand. This is not my area of expertise, and also it's quite expensive. And I think given the future with the targets from the federal government in terms of packaging materials and plastics, and also possibly a realignment of manufacturing and production in Australia, I think it would be very wise for us to get ready to support exporters to meet the needs of the packaging needs in other countries. And I think as we move forward, requirements for using the right amount of packaging and the right type of packaging materials will tighten. It can only tighten. And for this we need independent testing and proper, well-established standards. I mean, we're lucky in Australia, and many countries have Standards Australia, which is a reputable way of doing things, and I think we should exploit this way of doing business, where you have clear test protocols and test methods to certify materials and devices and packaging systems in this case.
Yep, that's great. Thanks, Vincent. And that, I guess, leads me into thinking a little bit more about the demand for some of these services. And it's not just in relation to some of those packaging compliance things, but it's the sorts of research capabilities that Hoyer and Bronwyn talked about as well, where companies may want to use those services, but there's a big step involved in actually going to a university and talking about those capabilities. And particularly when we're talking about some funding, some research that may be funded by government. So therefore, that suggests that there's a fairly significant impost associated with developing that research. I guess, how would you suggest that companies talk to you or approach you or engage with you about their needs without necessarily having to commit upfront to funding research and those sorts of things? How can they better access the sorts of capabilities that you have, as well as helping you to communicate to government that there are some capabilities that need to be developed in Australia, or some research that needs doing in Australia? Again, because some of our members are small to medium enterprises, without requiring too much of them in the first instance.
Well, as Bronwyn explained before, there's sort of approaches you can, if you're a small organization or you're a bit unsure about what it is you want to do, you can sort of dip your toes in the pool by having small project or exploratory type projects, which can even involve undergraduate students to just have a look. It's a high risk strategy, but at least you can have a look at it. I think in Australia, generally, from my side of things, maybe quite different, is that generally what university can do, and the real talent in universities is not necessarily known. Some universities are better at promoting themselves or some of their capabilities, but may not be really there. And some universities have got very, very good competencies in some areas, but are not well at all. And there is a bit of a lack of knowledge, if you like, between industry and academia sometimes. And oftentimes, I've been doing this for many years, you find industry partners looking and looking and looking for years. And then suddenly they by accident stumble upon a group or one academic who happens to know. I'm not sure I have got the solution for this, but for many years I thought there'd be there's room for a brokerage type service, where someone said, look, I need to come up with a solution. I've got a problem. You can't go around knocking at individual academics' doors or universities. Some universities are not particularly well organized in that sense. You get you hit the main switchboard and you mention a few words, and then that's it, they're lost. So it is difficult. I suppose we have to do a better job of explaining to industry what it is we are truly capable of doing. And there's no excuse for that today. I mean, we've got the internet and we can inform people quite clearly of what we can do.
Yep.
And APCO presumably has a role to play as well. And this webinar today is a good example of that.
Yep, I agree. I think that's a good point. Oh yeah, yes.
Yes, I just add something to what Vincent said. I said for industry that, for companies that are not quite sure if they should, invest time and money in research, well, what they can do, they can contact us and we could do a short workshop with them to understand what their real needs are. And after that, and that doesn't bind them to anything. And after that, we can discuss, what's possible.
Great. Yep. Bronwyn.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment as well. I think one of the vehicles that I've seen that seems to be working rather well is the SME engagement program in the Fight Food Waste CIC. So that seems to be a very successful entry point program for people interested in just dipping their toe in the water. It's tailored because of a short-term CIC cross-funded SME engagement. And I'd like to see that sort of model adopted more broadly because this SME engagement is a challenge. It's one of the things that most of the funding vehicles are not well tailored for. I think the other thing is that it's more of the universities that can put together a sort of umbrella entry point for a particular topic. And then once you hit that umbrella, you can then, so for instance, in our case, if we're saying that we're looking at plastics, if you talk to within the universities, we know who's doing what, but it's very, it's not transparent to an outsider how to access the right people with the right expertise. So I think there's an obligation for universities to more appropriately structure so that we can reach the right people through an umbrella group that represents that body within the university, that expertise set.
Yep, that's fantastic. Thank you, Bronwyn. And all of these comments are confirming in my mind that the CPR idea is a really good way of bringing together people, just so long as we can find the right vehicles for the conversations. But I think we're making a good start today. So there have been some questions coming through the Q&A function and also one in the chat. And in fact, I think the one in the chat box was the first one. So that's from Didier. What work are universities doing in the area of recycling complicated packaging, specifically oily lubricant bottles? Looks like no.
Well, from VU, we're not doing any work on that. I suppose this is what we would call contaminated plastics or packaging. At VU, we have no particular effort on this. We're not carrying out any particular work on this. Again, if an industry organization had a particular problem, well, maybe Bronwyn could help them with it.
Yeah. I was going to say this is the sort of thing that we do, and we're looking at different vehicles, as I said, for reuse or conversion of those kind of products. And that is a specific question, but it's not an unusual one.
Mm. Okay, so there's some capability there. That's excellent. And we have some questions in the chat function. So first of all, from Holly, are there any institutions that facilitate the industry uptake in advanced technology developed in academia? So facilitating uptake of the technology. So you develop the technologies, what's your sort of work process to facilitate uptake of that?
Again, I think Bronwyn has experience at the CSIRO. I think the CSIRO is the leading organization in that area. I'm not sure too many universities have been extremely successful at converting, well, in Australia generally. Sadly, we don't have a good reputation at converting bright ideas into commercial outcomes, and there's some notable examples, but you know, Bronwyn?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that institutions that facilitate this are probably one of the biggest gaps, because that bridging the valley of death, as we call it, is a real challenge in the Australian context. I've got to say that I'd love to see someone who would facilitate that. I think that actually, I'll just turn this on. I think that the comment that institutions and engaging with industry is one of those areas that we need to improve within the Australian context globally, I think. And we need to find effective vehicles for helping us bridge that. The challenge often is that the expense of that TRL 3 to 7 kind of range increases exponentially at each step that you go. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of facilitating these transfer exercises.
Yeah, certainly in the workshop that we had back in February, one of the issues that came up, this issue did actually come up, and it's come up in some of the conversations that APCO has had with organisations that support research, for example, Sustainability Victoria, that some of the ways that we design grant programs in Australia don't necessarily facilitate that project management all the way through to a suitable endpoint. We're very good at some parts of it, but not at putting it all together. So partly it's about the way that institutions do things, but I think there's also some feedback that we can gather up and provide back to government to support them in designing better programs to support that sort of thing. So that's an excellent question and some very candid responses. Thank you. Next question: are any of the panelists looking at packaging materials designed for product service systems based on reuse?
Can you clarify, Rachel asked a question, what do you mean exactly for product service systems? Can she or unless somebody else knows what, I mean, it's a bit foggy to me.
Yeah, well, what we generally talk about is the sort of the systems that support reusable packaging.
Okay, so okay.
Not just designing a piece of packaging to be able to be reused many times, but actually what are the systems that it...
Yeah. We're not looking at this currently. It's an ambitious idea, but you know, I think at this stage if we can reuse something once, which means it's used twice, we consider ourselves lucky. I think to have something that is designed from birth to be reused a number of times with minimal processing, it's a very ambitious and you know, a noble thing, and something we should all aim at doing. But I think we're a fair way off at this stage, unless there's some other examples.
Well,
our project will try to tackle a bit of this, because we will work with the industries to see how that might become possible for them, and with whom should they, you know, join forces. At the end of the day, reuse is the only option.
But many things. Yeah, just to interject, if I may, I mean, we're going back a few way here, because really the old returning bottles and washing the bottles and reusing them, that's what it was. Today, we don't believe we do this. We just crush the bottles and feed them through the bottling plants again, which I'm not sure in energy, but doesn't sound too clever in terms of energy to me. And there are some very specific systems. I remember we did a project for Holden where they were exporting engines when we used to make engines here to Germany, and they had the engine racks. So they moved from boxes which were thrown away. In fact, Germany put a stop to that. They said, we're not keeping your rubbish here. You have to take all your packaging back to Australia. So Holden commissioned the design of a dismountable rack where they would carry the engine and then they would be folded and then sent back to Australia and reused, you know, nearly infinitely, if you like, for a number of uses. So that was an example, very, very narrow market. But I think it was driven by laws and regulations in Germany that simply said that we would not accept one-way traffic when it comes to packaging materials.
Yeah, great. Bronwyn?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not a big feature of the work that we do, but there have been a few projects that have come through. I'm thinking of one, a recent one with one of our postdocs who had an innovation connection on reusable crate type structures for transport. that were designed from recycled plastics that could be disassembled and then reused. So there's that sort of work that we've started to touch on, and we're increasingly looking at that kind of space, but it's not a large focus at present.
Well, CHAP is the world. I don't mean to make any commercial ads here, but CHAP is a world leader in that. They moved from their reusable pallets, of course, which is commendable, but they have these boxes for transport, which we looked at as well, and they're reusable. They're stackable, so you fold them back, origami style, ship them back to another source, and reuse them. So the CHAP model is, in a sense, it's a strange model, but it makes some input in that sort of approach.
Yep, it's an excellent example, and I'm glad you raised it. CHAP, of course, a APCO member, another APCO member, Woolworths, working with their partner to implement reusable packaging in their home delivery service as well. It's another good example, and APCO has a project looking at reuse this year. I think we have time for one more question. So Manuela, as part of my research, I'm aiming to organise a participatory modelling workshop with industry experts, among others, to inform circular transitions of the plastics economy. What would be the best avenue to engage members of APCO? Maybe that's something that we can answer. We would be happy to, on behalf of APCO, we would be happy to find out more about that and perhaps put the word out and look at supporting or informing members and engaging in that process. So just let us know about that. We are running out of time. In fact, it's 3 o'clock. We have run out of time. So thank you very much to our three presenters. It's been fantastic to hear from you. Thank you very much to everybody for participating. So there are other universities out there that have fantastic capabilities, and we've heard today, which I think has been really helpful, some of the bigger issues about how we might engage with government, how we might improve the interaction between universities and our members and governments. So it's been very valuable. So thank you again, Bronwyn, Oya and Vincent. It's been fantastic. Thank you everybody for participating, and goodbye everybody. It's been wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.